Yes, we had our GirlSpring orientation at Red Mountain, I guess 2 years ago, and I had hoped that we would be able to do it again maybe this year, but we had such a big group, and even with social distancing, I think we had too big of a group to do it. So maybe we can break up into smaller groups and do something this summer. Try. All right, so it's 3:02, and I guess we will go ahead and get started. It looks like we have a few people on the call that are from our Springboarders group that we know, but I see a few names that I don't know. So I'm Kristen Greenwood. I'm the director of GirlSpring, and we are a nonprofit organization located in Birmingham, Alabama, but our network is our website, so we reach people across the US, really across the world. So glad to see everybody here today. We have a monthly program every month with different speakers and different guests, and this month is our College Applications 101 peer-to-peer. We've had college application programs before, but they've been led by adults. So we thought this time it would be great to have our senior Springboarders, that's our teen leadership group, give this panel discussion since they have just gone through this college application process, and some of them are still going through it. So I'll introduce our panelists, and then we will get started in just a second. So I'm going to start just in alphabetical order. Alexa, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hey, my name is Alexa, and currently I'm like 99% sure on where I want to go to school, and that's Auburn University, which was my first choice, and I plan on majoring in chemical engineering.
Thank you. Ariel, can you go next?
Hi, my name is Ariel. I got accepted into my early decision school, so I'll be attending the University of Pennsylvania next year. And I'm not entirely sure what I want to concentrate in, but I'll be in the Wharton School of Business. So maybe business ethics, finance, or marketing. Not sure yet.
Great, thank you. Okay, Iona?
I am looking to major in either neuroscience or medical sociology at UAB, but I've also received acceptances from South Alabama and UNC Chapel Hill.
Great, thank you. Okay, Claire?
Hi, I'm Claire. I am undecided about where I'm going, but I know I'm going to major in English.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll start our panel in just a second. And so if attendees, if you'll just hold your questions until the end, we've got some questions already prepared for the panelists, and then you can hold your questions at the end. We'll do a Q&A. If you want to type them in the chat now, you can, but we won't answer them until the end. Or if you just want to keep a notebook and write down your questions and ask them at the end, we'll do that. And we won't be able to hear you. We will only be able to see you typing in the chat. So we will go ahead and get started. And our first question is, this is a question to the group. Just overall, what is the #1 tip you could share for this college application process? What's your #1 tip?
I can start us off. I would say the #1 tip is to stay organized and kind of have a game plan, because you don't want to procrastinate until the deadline days. So I would start writing your Common App essay in the summer and just set deadlines for yourself each month, so you won't be overloaded with work at the 1 week before the deadline.
And Ariel, just so everybody knows, so you're a senior, so you're saying start like the summer in between your junior and senior year.
Yes, I think I started in July, maybe, writing my first essay, and then I would have a bunch of different revisions for my draft for my main essay.
Okay, all right, #1 tip. Okay, anybody else have anything to add?
To go off of what Ariel said, be organized, plan ahead. However much time you need more. Like however much time you think you need to write something, you're gonna need more because your idea of something may change. So if you're writing something, you want to get at least a night of sleep before you look back at it again and revise the thing. And also writing stuff down on physical paper helps so much because it'll feel real. It'll feel like you're actually doing, like you have a real thing to complete.
Yes, probably. Y'all sound like maybe you speak from experience. Maybe you discovered this. You wish you had discovered this earlier, perhaps. All right. What about, just getting started, the overall process? And panelists, is everybody muted?
I think Alexa's trying to say something, but
Oh.
she's like cutting out.
Alexa, do you want to type it in the chat? Okay, well, she may be frozen. We'll see if she comes back. All right, maybe not. Alexa, if you want to come back in a minute, you can add to that. I think she is a little frozen. It's the only thing about technology. Sometimes when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it's not always great. Oh, so she is typing in the chat. So she says, her number one tip is building your resume. Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I will add doing things like GirlSpring is a great way to build your resume. So if you're not already involved in GirlSpring, I hope people will consider it. It is a great way to get your work on your writing skills, and also the things that you're writing during your time at GirlSpring, you can put those on your college applications. And I hope that y'all are putting those on your writing portfolio. Yeah, absolutely. That is a great one. Did I miss anything before we go on? No. Okay, so just getting started, where do you start? So how do you start this research process on college applications?
So I would say you just really need to look at what you are looking to get out of a college education. Like, I know for me, like, Auburn is not the ideal place I want to be, but probably a place for Alexa, and that's fine because we're different people and we want different things out of education and we have different goals. So I think just looking personally at what you want to get and maybe what courses you want to take that you can't take anywhere else, or just kind of programs that you can't get anywhere else. And then also those specific programs, mention their essays. Let the school know that you have done your research and that you are applying to the school because of those things. And it really helps you stand out because they know you're not just applying to apply, you're applying because you care about the school and its programs.
Yes, I totally agree with what Claire is saying, because when I was searching for where I should go, I ultimately wanted to go to a place where I felt like I'd be surrounded by like-minded individuals, because you don't want to go somewhere where you don't feel like you really belong. And then also you want to if you know what you want to major in, you want to find a place that's really for your major. Like, for example, I want to go to Auburn because it's one of the top ranking places in the country for engineering. So I decided that that would ultimately match with what I'm doing and the things that they do for the community, and also in their area of engineering. That just really fit for me. So I think when you begin to look for where you want to go, you should just figure out why do you think that you should go there.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think it's just a really personalized experience where you have to ask yourselves questions. Like for me, I knew I wanted to go out of state because I wanted to meet new people. And then I also, as Alexa was saying, look up what you want to major in and find the programs that are right for you. So I knew I wanted to do business. So when I was doing college research, I looked up schools with good business programs. And then also kind of keep in mind, I guess, the weather, if you're not big on cold areas, or something like that. And like also keep in mind the size of the school, because there's a really big difference between having like a traditional college experience with thousands of students versus like kind of like a small tight knit community. So I would ask yourself, like, what kind of community do you want?
It's also important for you to understand, like, especially if you don't have friends at the schools you're looking at, to do like extensive research, and go on YouTube and look at life in the day of blank. Especially if you have gone through all those things and now you're looking at a bunch of schools and you want to get a feel for what does someone actually go through. And I would look at like videos full of positivity. I'd also look at videos where people are like, "What's something you wish you knew?" and it's kind of more of a negative thing, because that can help you cut things out real quick. Because if you don't want communal bathroom, don't apply to a school with a communal bathroom. That will cut your money, effort, time. It'll save you time. Um, so just have an understanding of those kinds of things. Or like if a school has a grading system where only 10% of people get an A and that doesn't sit right with you, don't apply to the school, and get that understanding and do your research beforehand so you save yourself time.
I know something I did was like on Insta, how you can look up tagged location. I would look up the school, and I would see what kind of pictures like people were posting there. Like, was it people like who were like going to parties all the time, and like that's cool if you want to do that. That's not really my scene. Or was it people who were like going to academic conferences with like clubs from their school, or different organizations? You can kind of get a feel for what they're doing. Even like a lot of schools have dining halls, have Instagrams, so you can see what kind of food you're going to be eating. And just looking up the location can tell you a lot.
Y'all bring up some really good points. Yes, you definitely, communal bathroom, that's a really, really important one to bring up. I know you don't really know what you're going to experience until you go to college and have experienced something like that. So yes, you definitely want to think about that before you spend the next 4 years of your life at a place like that. Or even, somewhere, if you're out in the middle of the country and there's nothing else around you and you have to take like a public bus to even, get outside of campus, that's something to think about too. So, great tips. All right, what about, this kind of is kind of a follow-up question to that. So when you're thinking about colleges, I know, how do you think subjectively, both about where you're choosing because of the things y'all just mentioned, but also like big names? I know a lot of, it can be very appealing and very attractive to want to go to a big name school, or an Ivy League school. But, how can you really think subjectively about that versus your own economic situation or your own academic situation versus the desire to go to like a bigger name school? And when you're applying for these schools, if you don't get into the school you want to get to, how do you let that not affect your mindset and keep going and just keep applying, even if you don't get into the school you want to get into? So it's kind of a two-part question. So who wants to tackle that first?
I can talk about both sides of that. I think it's important to understand like your options when you're going into it. Understand your family's financial background, talk to people of that same background and talk to them about what they've gone through. Know that one thing doesn't fit everyone. You can go to a community college for 2 years and transfer into a state school and have a degree, have a bachelor's from that school. You can go into a state school, you can go to a private school, and through scholarships, and just understand what your options are before going into it, because ultimately you will be okay if you find a plan during your undergraduate career. You will be able to follow through on that plan and you will be able to sustain yourself. But beyond that, like when you're getting admissions or you're getting wait lists deferred, or even getting rejected, it's important to understand that the entire process is incredibly subjective. People will reject or admit people based on location, based on how much they can pay, based on a class or two. Like for example, me and this girl both applied to Moorhead Kane, which is a full ride plus fellowship at UNC Chapel Hill. It's very selective. It's very selective to get an interview for it. She got an interview and I did not. However, when it came to actually getting into the school, I got in and she didn't because there were two separate committees looking at these applications. So it's important to remember that it really doesn't, it's not saying anything about you, or saying anything about your abilities as a student or as a person, but it is quite literally someone else's opinion. And that changes from person to person.
Good insight.
To add on to that really quickly, like it's also important to keep in mind that the whole process is really holistic. So people aren't accepting you based off of solely your like test scores, your high school transcript, or anything like that. It's also you know, your essays, your story, personality, and like what you did outside of school, which has the same weight as, I guess, your in-school rigors too, which is what makes the whole process super subjective, because it's really hard to measure those qualities of like, how do you compare two completely different activities with one another, and how do you compare two people who have like different personalities. So that's what makes it more subjective than not.
Yeah, going off of what Ariel said, one of the like biggest things to me is like standing out, because like you have to realize that you're not the only one that's applying for these things, and most of the time the people that are like applying alongside you, like you guys have like, you know, similarities, so you want to like make your differences stand out to like either the college admissions people or the scholarship people, so that way you can like really like they'll like remember you.
Yeah, and I think the way to make you stand out is like you need to have like a point, not just be a well-rounded students, because everyone's going to have like really good grades, a really good GPA. So it's it's what you do, it's what you're passionate about that kind of ultimately gets you into the school that you want to go to.
It's important to remember that they're not necessarily looking for a reason not to admit you, they're looking for a reason to admit you. So it's not, when you're not getting into a school, you're not going as far as you'd like to, it's not because you did something wrong. It's because they had a limited number of spots. And something about someone has called out to an admissions committee member. So again, it is very, like, you can like definitely look up articles about this and they will make you feel better. But like going, like, you can read articles on people sitting in the room with a, you know, an adcom and listening to their process as they have to cut down on people, and it makes them sad too because they have gotten to know you through that process, but they're having to make a decision, and it takes a lot from people.
Those are all good tips. And yeah, I think it's easy to, you know, take a negative response and put ourselves in that mindset of, oh, you know, what did I do? But it's important to remember it's not you. There's just a million different factors going into those decisions. So yeah, good advice, Rose. All right, let's see. I've got our next question is rec letters. Okay, so I get a lot of requests for recommendation letters. So I think this is one of my favorite questions. So who would like to talk about the best way to ask people for recommendation letters? So when you're reaching out to whoever, teachers, you know, people that you know in your community that you want to ask for a recommendation letter for a college application.
I'll start for this one.
Great.
So first and foremost, I think that you should start asking for recommendation letters before like you even really need one. So that way you won't have to worry about rushing and meeting deadlines. And then also when you're asking for your recommendation letter, you want to ask in a professional manner. That way the person you're asking like actually like sees how dedicated you are to this. And I think that you should go ahead and tell them what you're planning on majoring in, and also like what kind of scholarships you plan on applying for. And also you want to add your brag sheet or either your resume at the end. That way you make it easier. And also if they like only know you like in the school, if it's a teacher, they're like able to see what other things you do. So it's like you're also expanding on your relationship in between them. And also I think that you should tell them what date you would like the recommendation pod. That way, both of you guys don't have to worry about if you're going to meet the deadline or not. And you should also be sure to appreciate them, and you want to like make sure you say thank you so much for doing this, and you can never like thank someone too much, so you just want them to know that you really appreciate them. And I also suggest asking them for like a copy of two different things. One recommendation addressed to like the admissions people, and then another one addressed to like a scholarship committee.
To add on to that, I think it's like you should have a hard rule that when you ask someone, so like like I said earlier, like write your stuff down, have a hard deadline of minimum 2 weeks before it's due. You don't know what's going on in their life, and you don't know how like what they're dealing with, so you need to give them at least 2 weeks before the weekend that your thing is due, so they have some time and then some to be able to work on that and submit it. It's also very important. Like I've been lucky to be able to ask my teachers like as soon as the year began, and they've kind of gotten to tweak it a little bit and send that. So I'll still give them 2 weeks to do that tweaking. It's important, like Alexa said, to at least for your two teachers who are doing the Common App, and for 1 to 2 people who are your coaches, or there's some kind of like director of a organization you're in. You should also give them time. Give them a heads up, and let them write that letter for you way in advance. So if it needs to be tweaked, you give them 2 weeks of time to tweak it.
I would also check to see how many recommendation letters you need because it differs with each college. Most colleges want 2 from core teachers, and then some will let you send like another rec letter from another recommender. It could be a coach, or it could be Miss Kristen. So I would definitely just like research into that first. And when you're deciding who to ask for a rec letter, like ask yourself which teachers know you best and can speak to the best of your abilities. And that's like something to keep in mind when you're like asking. But also I would also keep in mind like what subject you're asking, like which subject your teacher teaches, because if you want to major in like pre-med or something, it might be nice to get like a science teacher's point of view or something like that, something relevant.
I know something I always did was I always tried to pair like a very professional relationship with a very personal relationship. Like if I asked like a teacher, then I would ask like a mentor in my community. So you kind of get the 2 different viewpoints. One can talk about work ethic, one can talk about how amazing you are. It's just kind of, you want to make sure it's all balanced out and not one-sided.
You also want to make sure that you have the teacher in your sophomore and / or junior year, because I mean, unless you are spending a lot of time with the teacher you're having your senior year, it's going to be hard for them to write a letter for you when they've known you for like 2 academic weeks. It's and teachers who teach a lot of juniors are like used to writing those rec letters, especially if they've been teaching a long time. So they might have a process for it as well. So I don't know if people from Homewood are on, but if you ask Miss Cooley, she has a form that you submit to her before she writes you a rec letter. And her hard rule as well is 2 weeks. So like, ask people, ask around, ask your friends, get an understanding of like the teachers at the school and like how they do this process, so you can go into it as informed as possible.
And you also want to keep in mind that you're going to have a counselor's recommendation. So I would go ahead and get to know your counselor pretty well, because for our school at least, our college counselor writes our recommendation letter for every senior. And so I would just like make meetings with your counselor and just kind of get to know them so they can write you a rec letter. And as for the timeline, I think teachers really appreciate it if you ask early, because they're getting so many requests for recommendation letters. So I asked my 2 teachers, I think in late August, maybe.
Also, another thing I want to add is like to remember to remind your teachers. Like some of them, it's not like some of them like purposely don't want to write you one, but sometimes they like actually forget. So like don't like harass them and ask them every day, but like it's still okay to remind them like, hey, this deadline's coming up, and just make sure that like they still like are aware of it.
I
And
usually
don't,
do that. Oh, sorry.
sorry, go ahead. No,
Yeah,
you
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, don't forget the power of a thank you card once your recommendation has been turned in. Thank you cards are amazing. And it just kind of shows that you did really appreciate their recommendation.
Going off of what Alexa said earlier, I would give them like the Monday before the week it's due, like of that week, and then if you don't see them every day at school, talk to them Friday or send them an email Friday and be like, hey, what's up? And just kind of like let them know, like, so, not don't say that, but professionally be like, hi, would you please let me know once you've sent it so I can make sure with the school or whatever that my whole application is submitted. So, and like on certain with Common App, it'll tell you the exact day they submitted it. With some schools or like scholarships, they don't tell you, and you have no way of knowing. So it's nice to like talk to that person and have them let you know as soon as they submit it, and that also is acts as a reminder without you asking, hey, have you done it?
Well, as someone who gets asked to write recommendation letters a lot, those are great tips. And I will also just add, if you have the ability, if it's like an online form and you have the ability to go in and see if the person you've asked has actually done their recommendation yet, you may not be able to see the letter, but you can see if they've submitted it or not. Check on your end and make sure before the due date, that they've done it. Don't just assume that they're going to do it and think that it's in your file, because it's possible, because people are busy. They may not do it on purpose, which y'all have said, but people are busy. So just, always make sure that it's in there before the due date, and gentle reminders, because adults need reminders too. So and you just, you want to make sure you're covered. So good lessons, good tips. Okay, so the next question is, okay, so you filled out your application, you've done it with the schools that you are interested in. So now you have been asked to do and come for an interview, or I guess now in the age of COVID, maybe it's a Zoom interview. How do you handle that process? Who has gone through that? Who'd like to tackle this one?
I've this year I've had 4 interviews. I've had one for Harvard, Rice, Emory, and then I had one for the medical school at UAB, which is a whole process on its own, and I can talk about that too. But for my other ones, you should have a general, like, not plan of attack, but like know things about yourself before you go into it. And when I say know things about yourself, it's like have examples for very generic questions that you are probably going to be asked. When you're asked, tell me about yourself, that's important. And you can definitely look up different ways of answering that question to make it either professional, thought or emotion provoking, or funny, just kind of what you want to fit your personality or that school. You will probably be asked about the things you're majoring in and why you want to major in it. Clubs you've mentioned. Have a story. Like, don't, if you are mentioning a club on your thing, or like you're like, oh, I did this, and you didn't go to a single meeting, that is going to be a problem. Don't mention things you didn't attend, because you will not have stories to just make up on the fly, or think about on the fly during your interview. Understand what your greatest weakness is, your greatest strength is. Kind of like, you could probably also look up a generic what you're going to be asked. And what also really, really helps is, like, if you have a LinkedIn, go and stalk the person who's taking your interview. Like, go and like learn who they are, what they did, when they went to college, what they're doing, and kind of feed that into your conversation. Because a lot of the the prestigious college interviews are more of a conversation between you and that person, and it's supposed to be nice. It's supposed to be professional, but as you should feel acquainted with the person at the end of it, and they're gonna take that information and write you a rec letter. So it's not like a scholarship or a program where it's like you're at the next level. It's just supposed to add like an extra bit of like, this is who this person is to your application. So it's not the end all be all. I mean, for some schools it can be, but I know for Harvard it's not. I'm pretty sure for Rice it's not. Also, look into, if you have a friend who's done that before, go and talk to them about it. They will probably tell you, like, kind of what I told you, like, research the person, maybe mention like, oh, I know you were a teacher in this year. I saw that. That's so cool. And kind of just make sure that that person knows that you researched them, you researched the school, you have a definite reason to want to go to that school. I don't know if anyone on here is looking at doing early acceptance programs for medical school, but that is a whole other process in itself. And if you are planning on going into that track later in your life, you will come across this thing called multiple mini interview scenarios. And what happens is they'll give you a medical ethics question. You have 2 minutes to look at it and think about what you're going to say, and then you have 3 to 8 minutes to be like, if I were in this situation, this is what I would do and why. So if you are getting to that point, you should also look into preparing for that too. But for all interviews and all types of interviews, there are so many YouTube videos and so many consulting firms with like blogs full of information that will tell you and give you examples and, like really give you what you need to be able to go forth in these interviews. And if you're having like trouble like thinking of like, I don't know what my greatest weakness is, or like I don't know who I am, because I watched like probably 20 minutes of videos, 20 like minutes of content about how to tell someone about myself, because it's hard to like be like, oh, what am I? How do I tell you who I am? And it's always good to ask for help.
To add on to that, I would say that don't stress out about the interview, because from what I've heard, I've only done one interview for colleges and I didn't think mine went that well, but I would say that like the interview is supposed to help you. From what I've heard, like rarely ever does the interviewer say something negative, unless it just, I don't know, completely goes sour. But they want the best for you, and your interviewers want you to get into these schools. So most of the time your interview will help you, so there is no reason why you should decline the interview if you are offered one. And I would say also that interviews really differ from different schools, and even within the same school, it depends on the interviewer, because a lot of interviewers have different preferences with like how they interview people. Because for my interviewer, he asked me two really broad questions, and then the rest was like a conversation. So I really did not, I prepared by making a list of questions that I wanted to ask him, but I also prepared by kind of typing bulletin point notes to like the most commonly asked questions. But like I will say that don't freak out if what your interviewer asks you isn't something you've prepared for, because they are just questions about yourself. So like the two questions that I got asked were, one, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Tell me about your passions. And I didn't really know how to answer that because I don't know where I see myself in 10 years. But then the second one was like, tell me about yourself that your application leaves out. So I would definitely prepare like an elevator speech, a 1 or 2 minute elevator speech for questions like tell me about yourself, and like really broad questions like that, to just kind of like be a little prepared for, not that you'll need it, but like it's nice to have like a list of things that you want to talk about.
They're super helpful. Just curious, Alexa, have you had to do any interviews yet?
Not for colleges, no, but I have like upcoming interviews for scholarships.
So yeah, and that process is probably, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I bet scholarship interviews are different than admissions interviews too, because they're looking for different things.
And to add on, just like one other thing is that I've been told from other people is that one question that's really helpful to ask your interviewer at the end is, like, how do you think your education at blank school has shaped your career? Or like, what are you most proud of accomplishing at blank school? Because people like to talk about themselves. So give them that like opportunity too.
It's also nice to address people by their name. And if you're like Dr. Blank or Mr. Blank, Mrs. Blank, it helps because you're literally calling attention to them. They're going, oh, this person's saying my name. Also, and I'm just remembering that I need to do this, but you should send thank you emails to your people. If you can, a thank you letter would be nice. I know a lot of people have lost faith in USPS, and that's understandable. Email will get there. An email will get to them. So it is always good to send a thank you for not only the people who are writing your recommendation letters, but also these interviewers, because they are also actually writing you a recommendation. That's the whole point of the interview. So even if it's like a program, if you got their name, send a thank you.
So true. Yes. Echoing the thank yous. Can never thank people too much. People love thank yous. And what Ariel said, it's always good to ask people about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. Everybody does. It's human nature. So if you're at a standstill or awkward silence, ask them something about themselves. That's a good way to make conversation. Okay, so next on my question list is financial aid. Okay, who has started the financial aid process, FAFSA forms, or just, financial aid in general? Who wants to take this one on?
I can start. I actually already finished, I think I did, hopefully I did, my financial aid process because my college already sent me back my estimated like amount of money that I have to pay. So I think like this process was the most confusing for me just because we aren't really taught how to fill out the FAFSA or other financial forms. So I would say the first step in approaching financial aid is when you're doing your initial college research, every single university has a financial like aid calculator on their website. So I would just go and fill that out really briefly. And it also shows demonstrated interest. So that's good too. That's like a bonus point for when you apply. But I would go and fill that out and then like decide if attending this school is financially feasible for you and your family. And once you've done that, I would say like I think FAFSA forms release in October. I could be wrong, but I would fill that out like before the new year, just to get it out of the way. And once you fill that out, some schools require the CSS profile, which is another form that you have to send directly to the school. So like how it's been described to me by my counselor is that like the FAFSA is super broad and kind of vague, but CSS kind of gets into the details. And that's how they decide like how much aid you get. And I wouldn't freak out based on how much like money in grants that the government gives you, because usually a lot of these schools will give you aid on top of that. So once you fill these forms out, send it to the school. And once you apply to the school, usually there's this financial aid portal that each school has that you have to submit tax forms and like W-2s onto that specific school's website. So it's like a 3-part process kind of. And once you submit all of that, you also want to check the deadline of when all of these are due because they differ for each school. And once you get all of that in, when you get your decisions, you should get an estimate for your financial, like how much money they're giving you, if that makes sense.
It's also important to like understand what you're going to need. And if you have friends and family who can like give you a list of the information you'll need, you want to have that before you sit down. You want to know of the year prior. So like we had to have our information from 2019. So you want your W-2 forms 2019. You also want, if you are working, you want your own. You want your parents. You want to know dependent rules. You need to have your 1040 forms, and it's very important. The address on your 1040 form is the one that has to go in your FAFSA. Even if that is not where you live, if that is your parent who is paying for most of your stuff, it has to be their address. It doesn't matter where they are, where they live, and if you don't live there, you are still in state for yourself. It has to be that address. Also, be very careful about what you're typing in, and make sure that you double check everything, and that your SS number is not wrong, because that is something I struggled with, and I caught it like 2 months later, but I did fix it. But it was stressful, and avoid that stress if possible. Also, remember that this is federal money, and they're not like, the deadline is technically June, but federal money will run out. It'll just keep going until they run out of money to give. So apply like in October.
And like Diana said, be so careful filling out the FAFSA, because even if like one thing is messed up, you are at jeopardy of not getting a grant or losing any grant or money that you may receive And like, if there's any funky financial stuff that happened in the past year or so in your household, you need to get that sorted out before you even fill it out, because it's tricky to get money from the FAFSA in general, even more so if weird stuff is going on with your financial situation. So just make sure everything is sorted out. Cross your T's, dot your I's, all that stuff. Just be super careful when filling it out.
On that topic, I had a friend whose parents didn't file their taxes until like December. So I would be on your parents about that. I would be on your guardian about like, hey, I need these documents like by October. So if you're a current junior, I would start having a conversation with your parents in July.
And another thing with the FAFSA is at the end, after you fill it out, there's like this estimated contribution amount, which is like a number of like, I think how much you're expected to contribute to your college education. So like I would really pay attention to that number because it's a pretty accurate estimate. But aside from that, FAFSA only lets you add up to 10 schools that you want to send the FAFSA form to. So if you're planning to apply to more than 10 schools, what you have to do is like after those initial 10 send and you get confirmation that the colleges received it, you want to go back into FAFSA and just like change the colleges that you already listed out and replace it with the new colleges that you haven't sent it to yet. So each college gets your forms. And it never hurts to email the college to make sure and be like, hey, did you get XYZ from FAFSA?
On the emailing colleges, I like freaked out and I like sent an email to every college and I was like, what do I do? I missed your date. Those dates aren't like firm. They're really more like suggestions because they don't want you to freak out. They don't want them to freak out. So be like, the more you communicate with the college, the more comfortable you will feel and the more information you will get from them. Like, you'll get a feel of that. They'll know your name. It's good to just email them if you have questions. And like, this is not related to this, but with financial aid, it's really important to understand why you want to go to a school before you commit to spending that tuition there. It's also really important to understand if your family situation is going to change drastically to where you are not getting that scholarship money anymore from the government. If you're aware of that, if you are like on the cusp of where things are like free and they're about to not be free because your income is going to change drastically, that is something to consider before you commit to 4 years at an expensive institution. It's also important to remember, like, do you need 4 years of school to do the job you want to do, or do you need like 10? And how do you want to pay for those years? Because like, especially for people who are doing pre-med, it may be worth more to go to a state school or like a cheaper option in your undergrad and save up and really prepare to take loans when you're going to grad school or you're going to medical school. So that definitely matters as well.
Also, something that I would like to add is like not being afraid to ask questions, like specifically at like your certain school. Like I talk to the financial aid people at my school like every day whenever I have a question, because like Iona was saying, that like helps them know that you are like really determined to go. So it's like you could like raise your chances of receiving more money, but like also because you like started early and you showed that you weren't like doing this at the last minute. So I just suggest like building a relationship with these people.
All good tips, girls. Very good advice. All right, so this actually kind of builds off of that question. So have any of you done any other or explored or pursued any other, outside scholarships? So you always see these ads on the internet pop up for all these different scholarships. Has anybody tried that route outside of the federal financial aid?
I'll start for this one. So for me, I suggest like looking for scholarships that like really highlight what you do. Like, for example, for me, it was like leadership and diversity. And then for any question that I ever have to answer on a scholarship, I like copy and paste that question into a Google Doc. And then I like have my answer, because then when I go to another scholarship that asks another question, I'm just able to like copy my exact response and put it in there, which like really saves time. So like in regards to like looking for scholarships, I suggest looking for them like really you can start looking now, but like also maybe like towards the summer.
I definitely recommend like applying for outside scholarships. And I have like an Excel spreadsheet with like over 100 scholarships outside of schools that I'm working my way through. Because I'm going to be an English major. I don't need to be going into college with debt, but it's really important just to like pursue options outside of college financial aid, because a lot of colleges, they're really stingy with their money. So, and especially like these super competitive schools, like what you might get at a private school is definitely not going to be the same as what you're going to get at a state school, or what you're going to get at an Ivy League school is not going to be the same like that you might get at some like university that no one's ever heard of. And so I actually like, I'm a quarter finalist for a scholarship now that like will offer up full tuition if I win, fingers crossed. But you just really want to make sure that like you're pursuing every option possible with scholarships. Unigo has a ton. There's a search engine called Sally Mae that also has like a bunch. And your school library, almost every school library has this. It is a book full of scholarships, and there are different categories that you can look in: scholarships for women, scholarships for Hispanic student, any kind of scholarship that you might be eligible for, they'll have it categorized. I recommend trying to find the book and picking a few out.
Yeah, I'll add on. So I would say that like when you're doing your initial scholarship research, like apply to 3 different, I guess, levels. Like do the national scholarship search, and then local, and then but also state, because there's different levels of like competitiveness. Because I applied to the Gates scholarship and the Koch scholarship, and I didn't advance in any of those. So it's really like not like, if you don't get the national scholarships, it's fine, because there's always going to be other opportunities out there for you. But I will say that like a lot of these like big name schools have really generous financial aid. For example, a lot of the Ivies have, if your family makes like less than 75K, I think you get full tuition paid. So like I would definitely look into that, because like a lot of these schools are really generous with aid. So then once you calculate, I guess, how much financial aid you would receive, I would start searching for scholarship amounts that kind of pay for the rest of your tuition fees. But I would also use like scholarship search engines such as like FastWeb and like Scholarship Points and stuff like that, because those are just really kind of like easy. Not It doesn't take a lot of time to fill it out.
On that, like it is, I don't care what grade you're in, it's not too early to look at FastWeb. Like they have scholarships for every grade, anything. Even if you don't get any of them, you now have an arsenal of writing, and it's always nice to have an arsenal of writing so you can just recycle your thoughts throughout applications for years, because it's always nice to have those thoughts on paper. And like in addition to that, like I also applied to the Koch scholarship and I didn't advance at all, and like that's a bit, it's a huge one, it's very competitive. And it's important to again understand that someone's looking at you objectively, and not only are they comparing like what you've done, they're also looking at hours. And it's like it's easy to, you know, put your heart into something but not put that much time into it. If that's a factor, that can, it can play into it. And with other scholarships, like again, just plan ahead. Even though there are always going to be outside scholarships, like there's definitely a bunch due tomorrow, probably definitely a bunch due in 2 weeks. There are always going to be those resources, but when you are looking at something that you're taking very serious, plan ahead. Have people look at your stuff. If you know someone who's gotten that scholarship, ask that person to help you, because they did something right.
Also, I suggest like really understanding the fees of your college, because like misconception is that like a full tuition is like a full ride, but like at the same time that's college, you may still have to like pay for your boarding. So like you may think that you have to like all figure it out, but like at the same time you don't. And even if you do get like a full ride, you should still apply for outside scholarships, because that way you'll have like spending money and you'll be like financially secure and you won't have to like worry about how you're gonna live.
And to add on to that, it is important to like that is so important because UNC is giving me full tuition, but in my like form it says that I have to spend 18K on other things. So it's important to understand like what does it also there it's very different. Living in Birmingham, Alabama is going to be very different from living in New York, New York. Those are different like expenses. That's a different rent. um, it's it's a different life, and you need to be able to pay for that life if that's something you're choosing. So when you're doing your FAFSA, this is kind of going back. Put in work study. You want to do a work study. You want to get money for stuff. You want to like if especially if you're in STEM, you can make a lab a work study. So you are getting like hours, stuff for your career, and money all in one go. And you want to make sure that's on your FAFSA so you get that money. And it is like a few grand a year, and that few grand is gonna matter.
All right, lots of good advice, good things for people to think about. And yeah, really good point, Iona. Birmingham, Alabama, living expenses are very different from New York or Chicago or almost anywhere else. We have a very low cost of living here, and that's something to think about. And yeah, full ride may not cover what you think it covers. So, yeah. Okay, so this is the last formal question I have for you. So what is one thing that you wish you knew before you started applying, before you started this whole college application process? So who would like to tackle that one?
I can. I think one thing that I wish I'd known and that I would just kind of tell anyone is like, be prepared for your plans to change. Like, I started the college application process like 90% sure of where I was going and 100% sure of how much money I was getting. And I got accepted into the school and I was like, okay, so this is what's going to be the plan. And then one of my scholarships fell through. I was getting less money than I thought, but I was still getting a good amount. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm still going here. Another scholarship fell through. And I mean, I still get good money there, but like it's now a lot more expensive. And then I went up to Ohio to tour school, and I randomly toured this one school I wasn't planning on seeing while I was up there, and absolutely fell in love with it. They had programs that were perfect for me, and I get more money there than I thought I was going to go to at the beginning. And now I'm still undecided, but like I also have competitive offers from other schools. And when I have to fire plan, it is now like I don't have as long as I did till May 1st back in June, and I don't know where I'm going. So just be prepared for your plans to change and just be very flexible because it's going to be a wild ride.
I would say don't like stress yourself out and compare yourself to other people, because at the end of the day, this process isn't about anyone else. It's like about you and what you want in your college experience. Stay away from College Confidential, because it's just, it gets really toxic when you're just like reading through what everyone's saying. But I would also say that just like, manage your time. You don't want to add any additional stress if you have like a bunch of essays that you have to write a week before a deadline. And yeah, just go with the flow. Don't stress yourself out.
And like going on the stress thing, like understand what you're signing up for before you start. I would look at all of the writing you have to do for a school, like like literally make that one task in your mind. Like you're taking 30 minutes to look at what you have to do, because that mental preparation for an essay, whether it be 100 words or 700, is very important. The like thought process you need to be in to like feel proud of what you write will take you time, and you have to budget that time into what you're doing. You can definitely like I'm not gonna lie, I applied to Chapel Hill like with writing of like 7 hours. Was it great? No. Did it work? Somehow. And like that was, I got lucky there, but it's important to like have a plan when you're applying to somewhere and feel secure in that plan.
Yeah, going off of what Iona was saying, I think one thing that like everyone should know is that it's okay to change your mind. And like sometimes you really do need to change your mind. So like you don't want to just like focus on one school because like anything could happen. And then if you were just focusing on that one school, like your situation is gonna be like more bad than it was if you would have like had a backup plan.
I like remembered one thing. If you're like applying to a school with like kind of chill professors, like I would email them and be like, hey, can we talk about this major? Because I know the UAB does that. So if you email UAB and you like look up a major and you look up the department chair, email them, be like, hey, can we like talk? And like normally you can be there in person. I've had Zoom meetings this year. It's important to do that because like for all of high school, I was like, I'm gonna major in biomedical engineering. And then I had a meeting with a guy and he was like, you want to do pre-med, right? And I was like, yes. And he was like, do you love math? And I was like, no. He was like, don't do this to yourself. So it's important to have those conversations beforehand so you're not like I'm not like 1/8 of a way into an engineering degree before I'm like, wow, I don't like math. And that will happen. There's nothing wrong with that happening because then I know people who like will go from materials engineering to sociology, which are different. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can minimize the chance of that happening, it will feel good too.
Yeah. And another thing I would say is like be bold. Don't be afraid to email people and just like call the admissions office or anything because you could also schedule, or I would definitely email your admissions officer with questions that you can't find on the website or anything else from, I guess, like a quick Google search, because that shows that you're like interested in the school, but it also shows that you're actually going out of your way to reach out to them. And like Iona said, I scheduled a Zoom meeting with the business undergraduate advisor of the Washington University in St. Louis. So like that is a great way for to get like a teacher or a professor that's actually at the university to advocate for you once the admissions process like rolls around. So that shows that you're interested, but it also shows like something about your personality that says like, oh, you're willing to put yourself out there, and that's what colleges are looking for.
Okay, so going off of that, this wasn't the question, but to me, I personally would recommend dual enrollment, but like only because I did dual enrollment at Auburn and because of like my standing, I didn't have to apply and they just accepted me. And one of my recommendation letters is actually from an Auburn professor. So like wherever I send it, they're like, oh, so she's like already done this, and he like spoke like greatly about me. So like I suggest that.
And then also going sort of off of what Ariel said about not being afraid to be bold, don't be afraid to like be creative in how you make yourself stand out. Like that essay is a powerful thing. And for the most part, you can kind of twist it in whatever way you want to go in whatever direction you want. And the more you can make yourself stand out, albeit in like a professional way, is a great way to do it. Like I've written some of my essays about like literally one of my scholarship essays was about like Al Capone. And then like I've also written stuff about like personality tests and how I just am obsessed with personality tests, which we have a podcast on that on the GirlSpring YouTube channel. You should listen to that. But just don't be afraid to be creative and bold in what you write about and make yourself stand out in different ways.
To add on to that, like when you're thinking of different things to make you stand out, like you don't have to be strictly like professional in all of your applications, because on the Common App, I think one of the things I listed for like a description of activity was like voted most likely to smile, because that's just, I don't know, that just like, I guess I just took a risk and put it in there because I was like, why not? And for essays, one of my essays for the University of Virginia was about philosophy and Wall-E. So like there's so much room for creativity that just definitely take the risk and get someone to proofread whatever you're doing to make you stand out.
And like in addition to that, to give another example of something, Take advantage of your COVID. I'm sure you guys will get a COVID essay. I don't understand why you wouldn't. You deserve one. Take advantage of the COVID essay. Take advantage of your additional information essay, because it is another way for you to showcase your personality, what you've been through. If your if your main essays were really more about like who you are professionally or like with other people and not necessarily a story about yourself, I would try to work in something you've gone through in additional information, or the COVID part. And on that like creativity thing, there is no like take that risk, because my friend who got into U Chicago wrote an essay that he didn't think was going to work, but it was literally like he connected something that John Adams said to Catcher in the Rye, saying that if John Adams hadn't gone to Harvard, the Declaration of Independence would have been like 16 days late, and that it matched up with something in Catcher in the Rye. He backed it up, and it worked. And just if you are able to explain your thinking process, however wacky it may be, and it's a pretty cool essay, it will work.
Anything if like, I know like when I was applying to Tulane, I had like 5 opportunities to write essays, and same for Miami University. I wrote every single essay and I tried to make them all different, but like take advantage of how many essays you get to write and try to reveal something different about yourself in each essay. And because that's really where they are getting to know you. So kind of the more you can tell them about yourself, the better.
All right, great advice. So that was the last of the scheduled questions. It looks like we've got some questions already coming in from our attendees. Okay, so the first question we have is, these are just kind of the order they came in. Should you start asking for rec letters junior year while the relationship is still fresh, or should you wait and then remind them of what you've accomplished in August of senior year?
I think that the earlier the better, really. But like you could still ask them like I would start asking in July, but it's not like bad to ask them during junior year, because even then they've like really had their relationship with you and they'll be able to like talk about more things and like talk about you on a personal level.
I agree with that. I would definitely ask your people the like right as school ends. I asked mine in August because the 2 teachers that I asked, they were also going to teach me again this year, which was nice because then I could look at them every day. They'd be like, "Oh, I have to write her a rec letter," and that's kind of something they continually thought about. But for people like I didn't have the relationship with, I still did ask, and like I did try to ask like 2 to 6 weeks before it was due. But the earlier the better, always.
And also thinking when you're asking, think of how you're going to have to send that in. Because I mean, a lot of like my colleges for actually like being admitted, it was like a link that I could not access, only they could. And so you might want to ask that a little bit sooner, like early, but still sooner than like months and months before you actually need it. But also like there were some scholarships where I had to have the recommendation and then I had to mail it in, and that required like things being mailed to me, things being faxed to me, things like being emailed and stuff. So just think about how you're going to have to send it in, and that will probably give you a better idea of when you need to ask.
I'd say if you plan to ask early, like at the end of junior year, you need to send a follow-up email reminding them after summer, because sometimes teachers will forget that you asked something like through a break. Also, when you're asking for rec letters, definitely waive your right to see the rec letter, just because it's customary for like teachers to, I guess, include more things if they know that it's actually confidential.
And on the confidential note, if you don't do the homework for a class, don't ask the teacher for a rec. If you are talking in that class, if you're on your phone in that class, don't ask the teacher for a rec. If you haven't received verbal confirmation in some way or form that the teacher likes you, do not ask for a rec. Like seriously, we have our math teacher, he wrote me a rec letter, but he is known for being honest. And I'm not the greatest math student, but I was still able to get that rec letter from him because I like to think that I do have some level of work ethic. If you don't show up to band, don't ask. If you don't and I know that I've heard this from Miss Kristen on in her own words, in the context that she does this in, but if you are not showing up somewhere, don't ask that person for a rec letter because it's going to be honest. Sometimes, if that person doesn't want to necessarily say that, they can be like, I can't because I don't know you. But at other times, they're not going to tell you that. It's important for you to gauge, did I show up? Was I mentally present? And based on those factors, ask people who have seen you, actually.
Going off of what Iona is saying, I also I don't know if people suggest to get rec letters from your sophomore or freshman teachers, but I kind of do, but only because some of those teachers are people you have really good relationships with. For example, one of the teachers I asked for, I've taken him the last 3 years. So he was like, of course I'll write you a letter. And it was yeah, I just think that you should ask the people you have the best relationship with, besides people, besides a class that you may have a good grade in.
All right, I think, again, great tips. We've got another question. The next question, just in the order they came in, is how important do you, oh good, I'm not muted. How important do you think it is to show your personality in your essay? If it's very important, what would be a good way to do so? And Ariel, I think, or did you want to answer this one? Is that what you're doing?
I'm just clicking on all of them, so then they show up for the yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just keep it organized.
Thank you. Okay, so whoever wants to tackle that, how important do you think it is to show your personality in your essay? If it's very important, what would be a good way to do so?
I think it's super important. I was talking about being creative. I think it's good to show what you're passionate about. And also, I think it's good to incorporate humor when you can. I like to think I'm funny. I don't know. But just maybe a one-liner here and there, or some sarcasm. Those are humorous techniques I worked into my essays. And then also showing what you're passionate about. I'm a playwright and I write plays, and I've had plays produced and I've won awards for plays. So just showing what you're passionate about is a great way, and so is working in humor.
I would agree with that. I definitely think essays are where your personality has to shine. So I would really suggest, unless they're asking you specifically to talk about an activity or something that you do, I would avoid resume dumping all your activities, because your Common App already reflects what you do. So now you want to talk about kind of who you are as a person, how you overcome hardships or something. But I will say that there is the misconception that you have to have a really unique background story to write a good essay, and that's not true. You just have to tell a narrative, put the admissions officer into your shoes, when they're reading your essay, as if they're living the moment through your eyes. So I wrote about working in an Asian market as my Common App essay. So it doesn't have to be really fancy. It's just how you talk about it, and what you say you learn from it. You want to show by the end of the essay, you want your admissions counselor to be able to answer the question, what type of person are you? What can you contribute to the school? And what are you passionate about? And every sentence should really reveal something about yourself. But it's also a time where you can add snippets of your personality. I added puns in mine, but they were kind of bad puns.
It's important to remember that, again, this is a subjective process, but the resume dumping is very important. Do not do that. Please don't do that. They won't even read it. They won't process those words, and those will be wasted words. The only time you want a resume dump at all is if you're explaining something, you're explaining something you did. So for me, my gold award had it had a lot of emotional build up to why I chose to do that. But I had literally 2 lines about what I actually did, because that wasn't important. What's important when it comes to things you're doing that are physical things you've done is why. They want to know why. They want to see your thought process as you reason out, like, different options, different things about yourself. Like, if you're going to go with that kind of essay, you need to focus more on your own thought process and how you can use your word count to really make sure that comes across in the most concise way possible.
Yeah, I agree. And like also with essays that do ask about hardship, to me, it's not really like, about invoking sympathy in the reader, but it's like about showing them how that situation like made you who you are, or like why like who you are helped you through that situation, and like what did that teach you about life as a whole.
And I will say there's no one way to structure your essay. Like I have a friend who's structuring hers like kind of a research thesis where she poses a question and answers it through different snippets of her life. So there's really creative ways you can go about writing your essay. It's not just intro, body paragraphs, and conclusions. It's just what you want to make work.
Okay, so our next question is, this might have already been covered, but to what extent it was not covered. To what extent is the Common App useful? Does it function as a foundation for most applications, or is it the entirety of the app for some schools?
Ooh, okay. I honestly at first didn't want to use Common App, but only because I have trust issues with the technology. So I was like, what if it like gets lost or something? But like ultimately it does become like really quickens your process. But like you have to be sure to start early and like fill out all the basics of information early. So then when you like do go to like your specific colleges, all you have to do is like click the button and say, I'm ready to apply. And like also to have your essay ready, and like when it asks for your Common App essay, it's like already there. So I think that Common App really is helpful.
I didn't go.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say I didn't go the Common App route. I used it for one school because it was a Common App school, and there wasn't just a general application. But I think a lot of it is like some schools have different essay prompts on their personal application than their Common App one. So I think you just need to do your research about which application you think would be best for that situation.
And there's definitely like, because of like what Alexa and Claire said, you want to save yourself time. You want to save yourself mental energy. I know that like for some people senior year is really easy, but for me it was not. And literally any hour that you can save of your life is an hour one. So like if you could, like, I would go ahead in July and be like, this is what I've done. This is what I'm gonna write. If things change, you write them. Like I had to go back in and write down like national merit semifinalist, which please do, because I had a friend who applied to all of these colleges and he forgot to put that on his applications, which is kind of a big deal. So don't forget to do that. Like when you get that like page saying read your application, please read your application. Please read what you said. Make sure that you didn't spell Yale DUKE, because you will not get admitted into Yale if that happens. Be very careful about that kind of stuff with the Common App. So don't put unless you are very careful, do not mention a school by name in your Common App or in anything that you are putting that will go to all your schools. In Alabama, there is a mandated week where all the applications are free. So I did not use Common App for my state school applications because I applied during that week, so my applications would not cost me any money. And like Homewood has really good counselors, so like they will like there's a real system that you can like take advantage of. But ask your counselors for transcript requests like as soon as you know you're applying to a school, like as soon as you know, because some schools will not take they will not take a electronic transcript. They require for you to have it mailed in. So the earlier you apply to a school you really think you're going to go to, or if it's a safety school and you didn't do the Common App and your counselor isn't like uploading it to a Common App, you want your counselor to know to send that as soon as possible, because I had a whole like nightmare with a UAB with that whole thing. Like my transcript came in the week before it had to, so I could be eligible for this program. And avoid that. Don't let that happen to you. Make sure you know what's going on and make sure you ask for a transcript request ahead of time. And I'm sure that I know that Ariel for a fact, and we can talk about this, but if you're applying to a Texas school, Common App doesn't work. They it's you it says Apply Texas is a different program. The Coalition app may work, I'm not sure, but the Common App does not apply in Texas. In addition, another thing that I like, if there's another program, this website called the Common Black application. So it is like a $20 fee for a bunch of schools, and it'll automatically put you like apply for I don't know how many it was, but it's a pretty huge amount for 20 bucks. And it's not just for Black students. It is anyone can apply. And you know, I would, if you are like, if you really want to have a lot of schools to look at and like understand that process.
Yeah. To add on, I would say that do your research to see if your college list is on Common App, because some aren't. But I would say that like Common App saved me so much time, because the majority, I would say 3/4 of the schools I applied to were on the Common App. So it was really just like a center area where I didn't have to fill out a list of activities 10 times, because it would send the same list to every college, and I didn't have to copy and paste like awards 10 times. But also, if you're applying to any UC schools or UT schools, the application process is terrible. It's like, it's compared to the Common App, you have to fill out so many things. So I would really just consider, you know that you're probably going to apply to state schools using a different portal, and then you have your Common App schools, but then you might also have like different state portal schools. So really just like balance out how many portals you're going to use, because I think Common App was the easiest to manage for me.
Girls, this is really good. I can see how if you were someone who is going to be applying for college, you know, next year, this would be, or even 2 years, this would be really helpful advice. Okay, so the next question is, when should you contact your regional admissions officer?
ASAP, like today. I'm not even joking. Like, you want to be harassed by them as long as possible. Like, you want their emails in your inbox for at least like as long as possible. Like, I have had like state schools in Alabama harassing me since I took the ACT. Like, you want that. Not that it makes a difference either way, but you want to have that constant flow of information, because the faster you contact them, say like, hey, I am interested, please, like there'll be a web, like there should be a place on any college website where you're like, put in your email for more information. You put your email in. It will be annoying, but you want those emails. You want to know what the scholarship opportunities are. Like, I know for Baylor, there's this whole, they sent me an email. I didn't even reply to them, but they sent me 2 emails for like 2 challenges to get like a whole year of tuition off, and like one of them was a slam dunk, and I saw a TikTok video of someone doing the slam dunk for Baylor. So like, you want to know if that's available. Like, if you can like dunk a basketball from like the whole court away and you see that, you want to know that. So like, be like, it's never too early to contact them. Like, if you are looking, they're not going to do this anymore, but sign up for those like in-person panels where they'll come to a hotel. And I don't know if Ariel has looked at these, but like, it'll be like Ivy League schools and like Ivy League like schools. They'll travel in packs and they'll come to you, and there'll be like a 2-hour session where you meet the admissions counselors. Have a copy of your resume if you are a senior and give it to that person. Ask good questions, kind of make sure your name is known. And you can also do that with like virtual panels, and I would attend those panels as well. It's never too early to demonstrate interest, ever.
I'm just gonna keep this question short so we can like get to the rest. But I would say that like when you're contacting, I didn't start contacting mine until early June, senior year. But I would say that like a lot of these big schools, sometimes you get automated emails back because they get so many emails in. So I would just say like get them to know your name, but also when you're contacting them, you should have like specific questions that can't be answered online. You shouldn't be like hyping yourself up in the sense that you send them every single stat about you. Like, this should be an email that demonstrates that you are interested, but also outlines what questions you want answered.
see, I'm muted. Okay, so let's, we have a lot of questions. So let's keep it moving. But yeah, that's great questions. All right, so it's so difficult to be able to gauge which colleges I'm interested in when I can't visit them during COVID, right? What is your advice in getting to know different potential colleges?
It's for me, I suggest like as soon as you apply, usually you get like this email that's like come to this Zoom thing that's like I guess like waiting on your application to be processed, and you can like go there and like there's just like a lot of things, or you can like email your admissions counselor and ask them for like ways that they can like you can talk to them. And also I suggest downloading this app called Zeme. It's like ZEME or something like that. I can type it in the chat. But like and you can join different college pages, and it's like you can meet not only admissions counselors but like also other people waiting to be accepted. And also once you're accepted, you like move into this other chat, and even in there they like drop links to when they're going to have Zoom calls to where they can like discuss questions with everyone.
I would get a general understanding of what you don't like and what you do like. Like I have a friend who is she's applying to a lot of like top 20, top 30 schools, and she has varying interests. But she knows she doesn't want to be a doctor. She knows she knows what she doesn't want to do basically. So look into your options of like what does kind of interest you, and like have some like, okay, I know where in the state is good for that program. And then, have like always have a state safety school. That always have it. Alabama has some really good schools. Like genuinely, we have some really good schools full of really good programs and really good people. So have like a contingency plan for staying in the state, and then kind of go on to like, okay, what do I want to do? What sounds good where? And really just YouTube is a wonderful resource for this, because people can talk about their own personal experiences without the universe, without having to necessarily represent the university, because they're not being sponsored. And it's important to like kind of understand why you want to go. You don't have to like have a career path set out, but like if you like computers, you have a lot of stuff in computers, look into good computer science programs.
I'll just add briefly to that. I think there's every college website, there's like virtual tours that you can take, see which campus you like. There's also virtual events that you can sign up for that's like chat with current students, and just a bunch of different stuff about like clubs and everything.
All right, good advice again. I think Celia, maybe can we come back to your question at the end, just because Ariel and Iona, and they can just tell you personally. Let's do that, just to keep it moving. We'll come back at the end. All right, so the next question is going to be, how do you find scholarships?
There are lots of search engines out there. Unigo is one I used. I think it's called Sally Mae's one I used. There are books that like most school libraries will have that'll list them. I know a friend who used something called Scholarship Owl. Like there are tons out there to find scholarships.
All right.
I suggest like, okay, if you go to Google and you just type in like scholarships to look for, scholarships to apply for, they'll like bring you different links, but also you can like specify like by the dollar amount or like by the type, like scholarships that give like blah 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 $1,000 a year, and then it will like give you a list. Or like sometimes I'll like type in like big corporate scholarships because you want to go for like the most money. So like I'll just type that in and they'll just give me like an already set out list.
Good. All right, those are some good resources. All right, how should students set up their LinkedIn? That's a good one. I see more and more younger people doing LinkedIn.
So I started my LinkedIn pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I think. I'm not really sure, but the easiest way is like to, first make your account, have a professional picture of you. It doesn't necessarily have to, like I wouldn't put money into like paying for it, but have a nice picture of you. make sure that you list the school you're going to so you can connect to people who've already gone to your school. If you have any connection to university, like if you've done like an internship or you've done research, I put that as my title. I put student researcher at University of Alabama at Birmingham because I am, and that's the most professional aspect. I put down vice president for Spring Borders as well. Put down little like things about yourself that like it's really something where you have to emphasize what you've done outside of school. It's a really good tool for connecting to people, really good tool for stalking your interviewers. And really good tool for understanding like different groups, and it's like Facebook but more professional.
Yeah, there's a lot of uh, professional people are on LinkedIn, like looking for professional things.
Yes,
Yeah,
and then
I'm
also,
sorry.
oh, sorry. Also, you can like find someone that you like haven't seen in a while that might benefit your, you know, like your college process. Like for me, like our school, we have an engineering academy, but like the person that used to be in charge of it, he left. But like, you know, I had like no contact with him. But like that was someone that would like be able to really testify about like my personality, and that really like helped me, you know, go through the process.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I have a LinkedIn, but I don't use it, and my LinkedIn account is very bland right now. So I would like, from what I've heard from college students, is that a lot of colleges they actually have courses that are kind of like career preparedness courses that teach you how to make your LinkedIn account. So I wouldn't be too worried if you don't really have like the best LinkedIn account right now.
All right, so the next one is, okay, I'm often overly ambitious when it comes to applying for opportunities and that I spread myself very thin. What is your advice for being reasonable with yourself and your time? That's a good question.
So this is like what I like answer my greatest weakness about, because it's something that I struggle with very much. And I know you, Sela, and you seem very similar to me, especially where I was a year ago. So it is important to understand like literally how many hours do you have in a day? How many hours do you need for your brain to just chill? And how many hours do you need to just go. And I understand that it's very tempting to like sign up for everything possible because you think you have the time, but you also have to average in the time you need to like calm down. You need like mental space time, and that is so important. Having time to just like not have any expectations of yourself or have anyone expecting anything of you is very important. So like, you know, if you're doing like I would either work out in that time, read in that time, scroll through something in that time. It's really important for like what I did to like actively combat this is like I have a bullet journal and I have a certain number of slots in that bullet journal, and at least 2 to 3 of those slots need to be something that don't take too much out of me, if that makes sense. So like I will make sure that each slot, any activity that I do, if I'm doing the dishes, if I'm talking to someone, because emotional labor is still labor. You know, like going through like what you've had to do, what's taken a chunk of your energy, and marking that down as something you've done. So keeping track of how much time you actually have in a day, and like you know, building this habit does take time, but it does work, and really having a physical like testament to, oh, this is what I did in a day, this is the time I have to average into doing other things. So like have a plan for homework, tasks, chores, things that make you happy. That also counts. Just literally write it down. Write it down, it'll help.
Yeah, I would say when you're being reasonable, start off by cutting down your college list, because I had 20 maybe initially, and I was like, I cannot write all of these essays, because every college you apply to, there's supplemental essays that you probably have to write for that specific school. And I will say that I would really start at the beginning of the year, because once the year goes on, you get essay burnout, where it's like even harder for you to write an essay than it was in the beginning. So I would say like try to get stuff done before, you know, you have a bunch of school assignments that you have to do. And I would just say when it comes to being reasonable, like I definitely thought I was being overly ambitious too with my college choices. So I don't know if we could do this like in the age of COVID, but maybe next year, like go to a coffee shop, sit down, have like a list of things that you want to get done before you leave, and then complete those.
Good idea. All right. You sort of touched on this just now, Ariel, but so when should you start researching colleges, and how many colleges do you recommend applying to?
It depends on the resources that you have and what you want to do. If you are looking at like this is my personal opinion, if you're looking at doing pre-med or that kind of thing, and you are really looking in state, I would apply to UAB and South, and maybe Alabama and maybe Auburn, but I would not apply to too many because it will stress you out. There is only a certain amount of mental space that you have to put effort into like writing about yourself, and it definitely does take it takes a toll on you. The foundation that I'm in, that like it helps people from like low income backgrounds, they encourage people to apply to at least 20 schools. If you're in a program like that where they're helping you and they're paying for your applications, and you have you have support, and it's really about finding somewhere that takes as much strain off of your parents as possible, that can be an option. But because I was so set on UAB, I only applied to schools that I really wanted to go to. So kind of like my whole rationale was like, if I want to go, I will only apply to a school if I want to go to that school more than I like want to go to UAB, and that will cut things. I had another friend who wanted to apply to like 10 schools. She went through she made a YouTube list of like people talking about their personal on his experience, and then she went, nope, 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 communal bathroom, nope, like that kind of stuff. And then she was like, cool, I'm going to UAB, and she committed in August. So like, if you can, she saved herself so much time, so much time. So if you can do that, please do. Save yourself time. Time is precious.
I'd say the typical thing that counselors tell you to do is apply to like 3 safety schools, 3 reach schools. That's like, oh, maybe you can get in, but it's like riskier. And then 3, what's the third one? Is it like, it's like a tier?
Target.
Fit.
It's
Target.
like target.
Target is like what you could get into, but it's not a safety. And then like reach is like, and the 3 reach schools, which are like the harder to get in schools. And that gives you like 9 schools. But I would say if you have a dream school already, just, don't apply to schools just to apply to them. I thought I could apply to like 15 and get everything done, but that also took so much of my time that before my acceptance, I think I only applied to like 7, maybe.
I have a friend who applied to like literally 30 schools, and she was not in a good mental state by school 15. Like she was, and she applied to all of them. God bless her, but she was not happy the whole time.
There's actually an app called Raise Me, and like supposedly you can earn micro scholarships through that. That aspect of it always seemed a little sketch to me, but you actually can. It will give you a good idea of what kind of money you can get out of school if that's something that's important. It'll also tell you if a school is a safety, a target, or a reach if you're not quite sure. So it's also like a good just resource for kind of getting organized and figuring out what a school realistically could be for you.
Yeah, I actually got like 10K from Raise Me for Northeastern. So definitely apply, use that app.
Good to know stuff. This is great. All right, so all right, let's keep moving along. We've got more questions coming in. Okay, what if the passion you want to discuss in your essay doesn't necessarily align with your major interest? Should you focus your essay toward that major?
I think that it's okay to talk about a passion that doesn't like align with what you're majoring in, because it really like shows who you are as a person, and it shows that you're well rounded. And like, let's say your passion is like something that has to do with like helping people. That like shows the school that you are like, you don't care just about yourself. Like you're really like a person that will like help change the world, or like really change their school. So I think that that's okay.
And like I would also look at Johns Hopkins essays that worked, and it will comfort you deeply because they can literally be like, I remember I read one about sandwiches, and it worked. So like if you are able to demonstrate like your thought process or the way you see things, and I think that like stuff talking about like sandwiches and that kind of stuff, depending on how the angle you're taking it, can really align with what you want to study. So if your passions don't necessarily align with your major and interest, you can still like, for example, if you like something that's like got nothing to do with STEM, you can look at it and write about it in an analytical way to make it, you know, to bring that like, oh, I can apply this anywhere. I'm a well-rounded person, and being well-rounded will always help you.
I wrote about psychology and I'm going into English, and I got into the program. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's about being multidisciplinary, which is what a lot of schools actually want. So one of my friends, he had applied to like this engineering slash math major, but he wrote about how like you can use humanities in math. And I think like colleges really appreciate if you can take different studies and combine them into whatever you want to go into.
Hey, Iona, I just want to ask, so you said something to read is Johns Hopkins essays that worked.
Yes, it's literally called Essays That Worked, and it's great. It'll make you like, because it's not just like one kind of like, you know, and I like, you know, not sob stories. I wrote sob stories. Like I'm like, it can be like a deep emotional like story. It can be a, this is why I want to do this story. It can be very, very random. But as long as you're able to, you know, convey that you have a certain level of maturity and intelligence, it will work somewhere.
Okay, great, good. I just put that in the chat. So, Ariel, let's do these next two kind of as it's a two-part question. Okay, what advice or recommendations can you give to an undocumented student, and any advice for juniors?
If you are undocumented, I would like, I know that you're anonymous, but if you can contact me, because like College Choice Foundation does help people that are undocumented. Especially if you're living in the Homewood area or anything that constitutes as Birmingham City, there are programs. Like I don't have enough information to talk about, like, you know, give you specifics, but there are definitely resources for you.
Iona, will you put your email in?
Yes, yes. And certain schools like don't care. They really don't. Like if you're looking at top 30 schools, honestly top 50, and Auburn is included in that, they do not care.
And you put it to all panelists. Try attendees too.
Oh, my bad. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, no problem. I did the same thing earlier. So, and like I would say that like definitely reach out to people who kind of, or try to find your community of people who like are going through the application process too, that are undocumented. Just because like I can't speak personally to that, but yeah, like reach out to Iona.
And also, sorry, like I saw Salome, or I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. QuestBridge will help you. They do not care. Apply to QuestBridge as soon as possible. That application should be open right now. They also will help you find resources. Like if your income is around like below 75K. Also, if you are like I have a family friend who she's undocumented, and finding scholarships is tough when you're undocumented because you don't have the papers. Your parents don't have the papers. So then your options can look different. But from what I know of her situation is she was able to pay through like an associate's degree, work, and then go back to school and do her bachelor's, and you know, work and like work that out. But please take advantage of the resources that you can, especially if you're a junior. So if you are a junior and that is a situation you're going through, look into low income options, because now is the time to apply to those programs that really help you with where, like, if that's the situation that you're coming from. So if you're a junior, oh sorry, no, continue.
Oh, I was gonna say, even if you are undocumented, if your parents or anyone has some kind of license that allows them to work here in the US, or they have like a taxpayer card, you are still eligible for a lot of FAFSA, because your family is circulating back into the economy. So, and I know that that's not liable, like an option for everyone, but if your parents have any kind of proof that they are documented to work here, have a taxpayer card, that is definitely something that you should keep in mind.
Yeah, also fill out the Css profile, because I think that will take into account when colleges find out how much money they're going to give you. And for the second question, like any advice for juniors, I would say get your standardized testing done, ACT or SAT, whatever works better for you. Definitely study for your AP test, because AP test, you want like 5 scores on those. Start creating your college list, start brainstorming what you want to write your essay on. And I'd say like the biggest advice like keep in mind is that your entire application should be a narrative. Like you should have a narrative. You should be like the kid who wants to go into STEM but really loves humanities, or have something that they can label you as, because it makes you more memorable. So I would start thinking of like what you want your narrative to be, and really just like finish the year off strong with good grades and with a good GPA, and then do something with your time in the summer. Like look for an internship, look for a job, put yourself out there.
Okay, great. So let's just keep it moving because it's 4:41 and we do have a hard stop at 5. So, all right, I'm a sophomore. I don't know much about the college application process yet, but what is Common App and what do college applications normally look like? It's kind of a big one. Anybody want to tackle that?
I can try. So like
Okay.
Common App is basically like this college portal, and it like first starts off asking you like all of your information, like about you, like what your parents have done, like how many siblings live in your house, also like any extracurricular activities you've done. It also asks like your grade report, so like from 9th through 12th grade. But like depending on what school you apply for, you don't need that. And also they have like a college search, and you basically go there and you like look up the college, but if the college does not do Common App, then it's not going to be on there. So then you just add it to your portal, and then they like tell you when you need to turn in your application by, and then you just go in there and you fill out your application. But also depending on the school, you may have to like write separate essays that are like besides the Common App essay. But I recommend writing the Common App essay because a lot of schools will like only want the Common App essay, and like once you already have it written, you don't have to worry about writing it each time.
Okay, Iona, did you see my
I think I responded to
Okay, okay,
that.
great. Okay. So Ariel, I think we may go to Amrita's question just for a second, and then come back to the others. So, all right. So, how would you recommend figuring out what major to apply under?
So I think first research if the college you're applying to applies based off of like accepts numbers based off of specific majors, because some colleges will like have a hard cap on like how many people they accept from each major. So if that's in mind, maybe apply to like one of the least like less competitive majors. But you could, because you could, it's not like set, you could always switch your major and you don't have to declare a major until like sophomore year. But I would also just like be truthful and ask yourself what you want to do and what you're interested in, and then apply under whatever major that could be.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a very like surefire way of figuring it out, but if there's a way that you can take this like a semester class and something to rule it out, I would. Because like I had a friend who was, she was really gung ho to be a nurse. She took anatomy and then she couldn't like dissect anything. And she was like, "This is a good time to decide that I don't want to be a nurse." So like I would pursue opportunities that like help you rule out things. So that's always easier to continue with like when you're like, "Oh, I don't like that." Because I took a forensics class and the emotional aspect of it was like I couldn't deal with like a certain case, so I was good. I will not go into forensics. So like have an understanding of like what you don't want to do, because then you will be able to hopefully find opportunities that will really encourage you to do. And this is kind of like a long shot. And me and Ariel went through this, but there's this thing in Birmingham called a Youth Leadership Forum. And it'll take you like every single month through a different part of Birmingham and a different part of the careers available in Birmingham. And it's really cool and really helped like a lot of people understand. It's a very long process of like getting into that program. But I would literally try to explore as much as you possibly can.
I agree with that. And also, like for me, I like came up with like the two top things that like I would want to major in. and like I'm like passionate about engineering, but like at the same time about medicine. So like I reached out to the schools and I was like, what do you think that I could do with this? And like Auburn, they have like this whole program where you can major in chemical engineering, but like with a pre-med concentration. So I was like, oh, that's like perfect for me. So yeah, I just suggest like asking the schools, what do they like recommend for your passion?
And also, like, you need to consider not just like a major, but what you're gonna do with that major and what you're gonna be able to do with that major. And a lot of that plays down into, would you rather have a career that you're doing what you're passionate about and you love your career, like you're super happy, you're just not making a lot of money? Or are you fine with not having a career you particularly enjoy, but you're financially stable? And different, and like either option is fine.
And we have like 5-ish more questions left. So like I think we should like power through these last ones. Okay. Miss Kristen, do you want me to just go ahead and ask the next one?
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll keep this one short. So is it worth staying on the student search service email? I opted into it when I took the ACT and I get like 15 emails a day from colleges. I'm skeptical about the legitimacy of.
I think that you should opt into it because like you get to figure out different schools and like you just open your like level of opportunities more.
Definitely, and especially if you have questions about where you want to go, it is very helpful because it'll give you universities that you've never even heard of. And if you are really like, if you're really a go-getter about like, going somewhere you've never heard of and you want to like look into that, it is so good. For giving you different options and like giving you different things that you could see yourself doing.
Do you want me to
You can go. It's okay.
go? I don't. Do you see the questions or are they like appearing on? You're muted.
Okay, sorry. We can do the others. I thought there were a whole string, but I see there's just a few more, so we can read them. You can read them.
Okay, so can you start applying for scholarships in the 10th or 11th grade?
Yes. Absolutely. They're open as soon as middle school. Apply to as many as you can, as soon as you can.
FastWeb is a great website for like age-wise and like grade-wise, so it'll tell you like exactly like what grade you have to be in minimum to apply, but it is never too early.
So what other than pure personal stats do you use to determine whether a school is the safety, target, or reach school for you?
Definitely like how much the school costs because like to me, I don't want to like go somewhere where I know I'm gonna like be struggling. So I'm gonna go somewhere where like I feel safe and that I'll be able to like get enough scholarship money to go to.
I would also add that you can like search up their average ACT or SAT score and then I guess GPA and see where you land on that spectrum. I guess that is like purely stats, but that's like I guess that's what you should be using to kind of like determine where you fall on your list of safety, reach, or target.
There's a website, I'm forgetting its name. It's not, I don't think it's niche. It might be like College Vine or something, but it'll like give you, you can put the schools you want to apply to, then it'll let you put in your stats, but it'll also let you put in what clubs you've done and the level of commitment you've had to them. Like, is it regional, local, state, national, international? And based on that, they'll tell you like, are you a good fit? Or is this a reach? Is it a target? Is it a safety? So I mean, it's obviously still not, accurate, and it can be discouraging, but it's not. It's still good to understand that if you want to.
And the question that we will end on today is what made you choose each school? Whoever wants to start.
I'll start. Money. College is expensive. And like, I mean, that sounds awful, like choosing like my future based on money, but like, yeah, college is expensive.
In the words of my band director, you go where they throw. Like that's where you are receiving the most money is where you want to go. And we have a family friend who is in higher ed at Miami University, and his whole thing was like, don't, when you're choosing a college, try to take the emotion out of it. Still important, but try to take the emotion out of it, because it really, and then at the end of the day, this is about preparing yourself for a career where you make money and you want to be able to be on your feet. But in addition to that, I think it's also understanding the feel of the college. Do you like competition or not? Do you like stress or not? What is the work to play balance you want? Like, like the vibe at University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa is going to be very different from the vibe at UAB, honestly. So like it depends on like what you're looking for and what you really want to experience for 4 years. And a way to like explore that again is talking to people, understanding that, visiting campus if possible, because I personally would not be happy in a city smaller than Birmingham, and I know that. So it's important for you to be like, oh, I don't want to be in a small town, or I don't want to be in a city. So stuff like that.
I also suggest like not just trying to go to a big school, like a big name school, just because it's a big name. Like sometimes I think people will apply for schools just to say they like got into that school, but like if that school doesn't have your major, you kind of like, or like what you want to do there, you kind of just like apply just to apply. Like if you're gonna apply, I think you should do it for like the quality of the application, not just like because.
So I chose my school, which is the University of Pennsylvania, because I've never visited campus, so I never really got the initial like vibe of it, because of COVID. But I would say that like while researching and talking to people who go there, UPenn has a really big work hard, play hard culture, and that's like kind of a culture that I resonate with because I really wanted a balance between like good academics but also a social life where I could go out and meet new people. And I would also say that like the location was a really big factor for me because I wanted a campus that feels like a small town campus, but at the same time it was in a big city because I didn't want like a campus that was like NYU, which was just the city kind of. I wanted like a campus feel, but still accessible to what the city has to offer. And that's kind of what UPenn's campus is. But I would also say that like definitely what Claire was talking about, like the financial aspect was so important because I had the option in my contract to decline UPenn's offer if they didn't give me enough money. So I think that definitely that would have been a big factor. If I had to pay a bunch of money to go to the school, I probably wouldn't have end up like committing to Penn. But I would say that like because there's so many opportunities for business, especially in like this campus. That was like kind of what ultimately made me decide that this is my top choice because of the endless like you have access to um, award-winning professors, but also research opportunities and internship opportunities, and that's kind of like why I chose my school.
All right, well, that was the last question. Lots of great advice. I think anybody listening to this would be really glad that they listened. Y'all gave really great tips and things that I think, are not on your usual, just listen to, here's the tips from the experts, advice about college. So great job, panelists. Thank you for being with us today. And I will just say, that we will have this. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to distribute this recording, but we will have it available in some way. Also, if people haven't checked out our GirlSpring app, I'm just going to put the link right here in the chat for you so you could download it. It is free. It is wonderful. And I hope you will consider downloading it. I'm just going to copy and paste these two. It's on the Apple Store or on the Google Play Store. So either way, you can get it. Now, how do I get it? Goodness, let me just get this. There it is. Okay, so there's two links there. And we have different talks once a month. We have an event coming up also on our next event is February 12th, and it is a trivia night, and I don't have really any details yet, but just if you'll, once you've signed up for this, you'll be added to our email list. So you'll get emails about that. And anything else, panelists, that you wanted to add before we go? Nope. Okay. I have one more plug for choosing college. When you are deciding, money doesn't make you happy, but it does make your life better not to have a bunch of college debt. So I just will say that. Think about that too. All right. Well, thank you, panelists. Goodbye to our attendees, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their weekend. All right. Good night.